what is the DNA of a city that is a successful technology city? Exclude San Francisco, Boston, and the New York metro area. What's the DNA of a successful city that has driving technology is the economic driver in that city? What does that look? What are the pieces of it? Tom, you want to start?
I'll start. I think the necessary ingredients are going to be you're going to need a university. You're going to need to have higher education. You're going to need to have a mechanism for commercializing. Well, you're going to need to have research dollars, whether that grants or whatever. You're going to need to have research money for primary research. You're going to need to have mechanisms and infrastructure for commercializing that research, turning it into companies, turning it into applications. I'm going to say those three are the first to come to mind. I think you're also going to need, as somehow or another, to get quickly to a concentration of companies that are in a position to collaborate, so that you're not relying on one company or one organization. Forget the word company, but say a culture, one internal culture of an institution that's driving the innovation, but rather a wide cluster of firms that are participating in related and somewhat unrelated research in industry and commercialization.
I would say, in addition to the education, you need visionary leadership, because that is the mosaic, so to speak, that brings it all together. And I think people like to live, work, and play, so I think there's very important that there be a recreation or cultural bent as well. That's where the creativity comes out.
Okay.
And I would add to that, going back to my piece, is that really it's about the place, and we need a built environment that attracts people who, from very different disciplines, and with all of the clustering that Tom and Herman talked about. But if the place itself is disconnected, if the place is not as interactive and vibrant and walkable, where all of these forces come together, we really don't have it.
Let me ask you, because you've mentioned some things that are interesting, and Herman, you mentioned it, is that this works when there's a partnership, strategic partnership between business, the universities, and government. Two of those three entities are historically very risk adverse. And for this to succeed, there needs to be an appetite for risk, because we're talking about startups, new ventures, that have an inherent risk to it, that both financially and as well as people's time. So how do you overcome? My view is you need an entrepreneurial culture, first and foremost, to make this work. How do you overcome the inherent risk adverseness of universities and of government in order to be good partners in reshaping an economy? Because when you talk about the research triangle or San Diego, you're talking about places that made a conscious decision to become something other than what they were. That's not easily done. It takes big risk. And that's, so how, you did it in Philadelphia. You overcame the inherent university risk of investing beyond.
But it took a crisis. I mean, that's...
Well, let's talk about that for a moment. How do you get two institutional structures that are really risk adverse to take risk?
Let me maybe start with the university side, because I really think this maybe was a luxury for some, but it was, as Herman said, a necessity for Penn given the crisis. But I think the industry that we are in higher education is going through tremendous changes. And while with the demographics moving up and everybody was winning, now there will be winners and losers. And as Herman said, the elite institutions will survive and will thrive, will always continue to thrive, will always continue to get 30,000 applications and only admit 3,000 students. But the other, many other institutions that are out there, if they do not partake in the bigger community that they are in the city, in creating this entrepreneurial infrastructure, they are going to lose. They actually, it's a moment in time that they have to engage and they cannot continue to do business as usual. Now, not all of the institutions realize that, but I think more and more are.